Hello, welcome to Cindy's Library. This is Cindy. Today I'm doing a book review of Rob Roy by Sir Walter Scott. So, in this, we have a young man named Frank Spaldistone. Uh, he and his father get into an argument about his life's plans and life's works. He wants to go into literature, especially poetry. His father is a merchant and doesn't think that's a good idea. Interestingly enough, the father is actually the oldest son of a at least gentry family in northern England, but he quarreled with his father, or was it his brother? Either way, he left years and years ago, uh, probably before Frank was born or shortly thereafter. Hasn't been back since. So, father basically says, okay, if you don't want to run the family business, go back to our ancestral home in the north of England and spend some time there, get to know your cousins, and let me know who would be the best to take over, basically. And he does have a lot of cousins. I think maybe 6 cousins who could potentially do that. Ah, and so he goes to northern England. He meets his uncle, his cousins, and I don't think she's his cousin per se. I think she's related to his cousins through the other side of the family. But Diana Vernon, uh, she is living there too, since, well, there's lots of complications politically, and her father has to stay in hiding. And Frank, of course, falls in love with her, but they have other ideas for her. And Frank actually meets Rob Roy kind of on his way up there, and then gets more and more involved as events happen. This is leading up to the uprising of 1715, I believe. And Frank has a number of interactions with the fabled Rob Roy. Now, Rob Roy, he's a real historical figure, and he apparently led quite an interesting life. He fought numerous clans, he fought the English, he fought for the English. It's kind of a Robin Hoodish character, sort of. He was a bandit, basically, but he was doing it in favor of the poor. And that is one thing that was also very interesting. You get a very uh, interesting look at how Scotland was. In the south of Scotland, it wasn't so bad. The land there is more fertile, more trade with England and the colonies. Maybe not quite yet, but that's really coming up here shortly. This isn't that long after the unification of England and Scotland. So the south isn't so bad, but the north, where Roy is from, that is not so good. Gorgeous, gorgeous descriptions here for some of these parts, but unfortunately, the land isn't fertile enough and the growing season isn't long enough to support the population in the highlands. And so you have a lot of starving people and a lot of people who would work if they could find work, but there's no work to be had, or at best minimal work. And also, some unfortunate things have happened to in Rob Roy's family slash clan, the McGregors, a lot of which he did not initiate. It's just continuing, so to speak. And you really have to feel for the situation some of those Highlanders are in. Don't necessarily have to agree with all of the solutions, and even always with Rob Roy, although he at least is more moderate than some. Have to give him that much. But just a complicated situation, and the book does full justice to that. Some people complain that there isn't enough Rob Roy in it, but I quite enjoyed it. To give a little bit of history of my reading of uh, Sir Walter Scott, I read Ivanhoe in high school, didn't find it particularly memorable. I tried getting into Waverley, which in some ways at least starts a lot with like this. A young man from England, maybe even southern England, gets sent to northern England or even Scotland for various reasons, gets mixed up in things there, learns about what things are like there, which is actually a smart way of putting it. We start with a character who the people of the time reading in England would be able to recognize and sympathize with it. And so as he learns things, they are inclined to go on the journey with him. Rob Roy has a good pace. It starts off fairly quickly. I think we're already moving towards Scotland by chapter 3 or so, or at least northern England. Waverley, I think I read a good 6 or 8 chapters, and they were only barely starting out then. I was also reading it manually, not listening, which definitely helped me get into the book for Rob Roy. So I might have to try Waverley again, but listen to it. I also read The Talisman last year, which was okay. Didn't fall in love with it. So this is the first Walter Scott I have fallen in love. I'm pleased to report that I am capable of falling in love with a Walter Scott book. So I would call this a success. So I think that's all I have to say about Rob Roy. If you are wanting to try Walter Scott, you could do a lot worse than start there. At least that's been my experience. So, have you read Rob Roy before? So, what did you think of it? Love to hear down below. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. So, until next time, I hope we all stay safe and healthy. And as always, happy reading.